And 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Hi folks, welcome. The night before the beginning of our 25th Purple Heart Project class. Kyle's already here. Kyle's my assistant in taking Luther's place this week from Newfoundland. He was one of the first Canadian wounded vets we had. He's been back with us. This is his third time. So all the guys will start arriving tomorrow, I hope. There's a storm brewing on there, or heading the east coast, and it may create a bit of havoc, but with any luck, we'll get them all here. So we're doing an hour tonight. The topic is ask me whatever you want to ask me, and I'll tell you whatever I can tell you. And then we finish this one on Thursday, which is 4 days into the class. You get a chance to meet everybody, say hello, see how they're doing. Always like to gauge the skill, the craftsmanship. And Frick?
I got a question from the chat.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
This one's from Jim Pearson. He says, how important is it to get rid of the crumbs inside a blind dovetail versus clipping the corners of the pins?
How important is it to get rid of the crumbs?
Inside a blind dovetail.
He probably means a half blind.
Yep, versus clipping the corners of the pins.
Clipping the corners of the pins.
You know how you clip the, or I don't know.
That's the tails. Although I'm going to assume that's what he means. Well, you want the sockets to be nice and clean. I mean, I don't want anything that's going to possibly prevent the joint from closing. So that all needs to be nice and clean, and you want the side walls of your pins to be nice and clean because that's part of your glue joint. And you want to chamfer, C-H-A-M-F-E-R. The C-H is a church sound. Come on in. You want to chamfer the inside corners so that the glue will spread properly, and it'll help joint go together. So I would do both. Next trick. Well, he's looking for a question. So what we do is try to impart whatever knowledge we have with you in exchange for raising awareness of what we're doing for combat wounded vets. I had the number at one time, but I know we will be over 170 wounded vets that have gone through our program by the end of this week. As I mentioned, it's our 25th class. We started this in November of 2016. First 2016, 2017, 2018, we taught this in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And in 2019, we moved it here to our new shop. There's been a lot of changes. We were over in the other building for 2019, and then we renovated and changed all of this, and this became our designated classroom. So, another question, Frick.
Yeah, from Darren Kenyon.
Hi, Darren. Where is he from?
It doesn't say because they're in the chat, unless they mention it in their question, but he didn't. Are your CBN wheels suitable for old Stanley planes and or wooden jointers? Worried about excessive loading from not-so-modern tool steels?
Oh, I can't answer that question from a metallurgical standpoint, but from having used everything on it, as far as I'm concerned, the CBN wheel is just a better, faster, and more efficient way of grinding steel. Now, using a little bit of common sense, the danger in grinding is caused from overheating. And the old traditional wheels were notorious for overheating. They just didn't cut as fast. And as you applied more pressure to increase the cutting speed, all you did is create more friction and generated more heat. The other problem was that the only way to dissipate that heat was either through the sparks or the blade itself absorbing it. Because the stone was porous, it didn't absorb any heat, but the CBN wheel is a big solid piece of steel, and it becomes a heat sink. So if you consider that the only real opportunity for damage is coming from the removal of the tempering through overheating, then the CBN wheel wins hands down. You'll love it. I consider it to be one of the few game changers in woodworking. Saw stop was a game changer. The adjustar was a game changer. And the CBN wheel is a game changer. Oh, by the way, we also do this not only to raise awareness, but also to raise funds. Our program costs, in fact, my wife just came back from Costco and said that they know they buy, when they go out to buy the groceries on the Saturday before when the class starts, because we cover all their meals, right? So Sunday night meal, and we finish on late Saturday afternoon. So I think there's 18 or 19 meals, and it's great food. So they have the staples that they buy, and they follow the list. So if they compared the list and they always buy the same quantity, the list for the April class versus the list for this class, what was the difference, Jake, in price?
700.
And so what were the actual numbers?
I don't.
20. What did she spend?
They spent 2,700.
They spent 2,700 today, and it was just under 2,000 in April. So if you're wondering if prices have gone up, remember that next time you vote.
And that only covers like the first couple days.
Well, yeah, that's only the staples. We're buying food all the time for that. I don't want to know what the total bill is.
It's a lot,
Yep.
because I used to do it.
Especially the amount of money we pay Frick just to do the barbecuing. It's scandalous.
What? Pay?
Next, Frick.
Tony Innes
Hey, Tony.
says, when making a Studley-like tool cabinet using a solid wood back, not plywood, how would you recommend planes to be securely stored?
So you're making a tool cabinet, and the back is going to be solid wood. Wow.
Yeah.
So figure for every foot for every foot of wood, so this cabinet is 24 inches wide. So for every foot of wood, you could get as much as 1/8 of an inch of movement. So that means you've got to allow for 1/4 of an inch of movement on that back, because, and this is made with plywood, but if this was made out of solid wood, your grain's running this way on that piece, this way on that piece, this way on that piece, this way on that piece. So because it doesn't change dimensionally change in its length, this isn't going to get any wider, and this isn't going to get any taller or shorter. But your back is by as much as 1/4 of an inch. So if I had put a solid back in there, the first thing is that would be really problematic, because you really couldn't fasten these to the back. I mean, you can make a big panel and put it in a groove on 4 sides and allow it to float. The only problem is how you're going to hold them. You could certainly run the pieces, the long pieces. If the grain's running this way, up and down, then these dividers could run up and down, and they could be actually fastened to the back. That's not an issue. But putting in a bunch of these little cross pieces would be an issue. So how would I do it? Well, if I was stuck with that challenge, I would figure out a way to make these dividers go into these vertical pieces and allow them to be able to move in and out, in and out. So I would make this piece narrower than these, so it would be sit down in a little bit. I would fasten this piece to the back, which would be the solid wood, with the exception of over here. Let's just deal with these ones. And then to allow this to move a little bit, I suppose I would probably figure out some way of having a mortise in this piece and in this piece, and there would be no shoulder on this, but it would dry fit into this piece and this piece. It's held in place because it's fastened to the back, and it'll just go in and out as it moves seasonally. Now, this one over here, you could do it the same way, although You wouldn't be able to glue it. That's too much to glue to the back, but you could screw it through oblong holes in the back, and you could still have same idea that this piece floats in and out of a mortise on the two side pieces. Yeah. It's a bit of a challenge. I mean, that's the challenge of working with wood. It's still alive. It continues to move. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose in that. Although I've never had, I guess I have. The biggest failures I've had, I made a cabinet out of solid, it was made out of ponderosa pine, and it was 36 inches wide and probably 40 inches tall. The back was solid wood, solid piece of pine. I had the back, there were three shelves that were tixed, meaning you couldn't adjust them, and there was double wedge tendons, six double wedge, 3 sets of double wedge tendons on the end of each shelf. So you think of all that strength, and they were what held the whole case together. The back was solid wood. It was floating on 3 sides, so it fit into a groove on the top and the 2 sides. It was screwed in place in the middle so I screwed from the middle of the back into each shelf to help support the shelves in the middle, prevent them sagging, and to hold everything in place, and it kept all of the movement of the back went out equal from center. Anyway, brought it home from Utah. Never thought that there was going to be an issue, but over 30 inches of cabinet, that back probably grew 3/8 of an inch, maybe even more. And I happened to be walking by one day, and I noticed that the part of the through wedge tendons were sunk in. And that's what happened. It literally had blown out the sides like that on all of those mortise and tenons. And they were all, it literally, if you look at a mortise and tenon, a through wedge tenon, you've got your tenon like this, you flare it like that, you drive wedges down in, and you've got the glue between the flared piece, the wedge, the center piece, and the same thing on the other side. And that center section just pulled down through, 1/8 of an inch or better. Anyway, so yeah, it is real, and you have to pay attention to it. Next question, Fred.
All right.
A lot of traffic here. It's a busy night.
Yes.
Busy place.
This one comes from Colton Walls in Roanoke, Virginia.
Colton in Roanoke. Been there. Hi, Colton.
When building furniture that needs to be assembled and disassembled, for example, a crib, what type of joints are recommended? Are threaded inserts and bolts strong enough?
So you're building a piece of furniture that needs to be assembled and disassembled. And the question is, are threaded inserts strong enough?
Are threaded inserts and bolts strong enough?
Oh, yeah, certainly strong enough. I mean, the thing I can think of is when we would do wood shows, the bench would always have to be assembled and disassembled. And we used to bolt them together, but that was just time consuming. And I switched to having tenons that came all the way through and wedges in through the side. So that was just a quick tap with the hammer and the whole thing came apart. Quick tap with the hammer when it was assembled and it was rock solid. So bolts or wedge tenons, wedged from the outside.
But he did specifically mention threaded inserts. When the benches we were using, it was nut and bolt.
Right. Threaded inserts. Well, I like them if the threaded insert, if the insert's on the backside.
A T-nut.
A T-nut.
But he's talking about a threaded insert. Like what we use in the
Yeah.
bench tops.
Yeah. So the bench tops that we make, we put a threaded insert. And they're pretty good because they've got those separate little teeth on the outside. So I guess the weak link is going to be the wood you're doing it in. Just make sure that you bore the right size hole for the threaded insert. And you want to sink it in there deep enough that it's not too close to the surface. But I think it is. I mean,
We use CA glue, don't we?
yeah,
Well, that's MDF though.
yeah. You could use, after you put it in place, put a little CA glue, the thin stuff, and that'll just kind of help to hold it, but I don't think you're gonna pull those free. They're pretty good. Next, Frick. You want to make sure you've got the right applicator for getting it in place. I think actually, no, is that, do they have a hex drive on them, on the inside?
No, they're usually a slotted drive.
Oh, yeah. But what, right. You just want to make sure that whatever ones you buy have a really good way of putting them in place, because the slotted ones aren't so good. Next, Frick.
This one's from Aaron in Chicago.
Hi, Aaron in Chicago.
I noticed you.
Go Blackhawks.
I've noticed you
mean go
using
Bedard.
Lake Erie's.
Go Bedard. Yeah, you guys got Connor Bedard. You better have season tickets. That kid's going to be amazing. He scored hat trick in his first. Wasn't an NHL game, but.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah, go right ahead, Frick.
I've noticed you using Lake Erie's MagnaCut plane blades on a few of your YouTube videos. Just curious what your thoughts are on them and how do they compare to other plane irons?
Can't say yet. Don't want to say anything off the cuff. Haven't really paid close enough attention. Jake might have, but I haven't really done any kind of a review, so I wouldn't want to say anything. There's nothing wrong with them, but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to boast about them out of place or say anything derogatory, because I just I make sure you clear up my answer. I have not sat down and did a thorough review where I could prepare to say. How's that? Sorry, I can't be more specific, but just not ready yet. Next, Frick.
Next one's from Stu Dog in Eugene, Oregon.
Hey, Stu Dog. I lived in Eugene, Oregon in 1982 for 6 months. Loved it.
Hi, Rob. A couple years ago, I made my shooting board after watching your YouTube video. I noticed it was a bit out of square, leaving a small gap at the top of the board. What is your advice on getting back to perfect?
Yeah, so use your shoulder plane. I'll show you what I mean. So, Stu Dog. Screwed up. I'm going to do it this way. So, I'm assuming what he means is that this is no longer square with that. So you could use your 10 1/4, but you probably don't have one of those. At least they're not that common. So I would use my shoulder plane. And what you're going to do flush it up on the side that's going to be sitting on the body of the shooting board. So if I'm out of square this way, Jake, are they able to see, since you're not holding the camera? If I'm out of square that way, I need to take some material off of here, depending on the grain direction. I'm going to start like this, and I'm going to take a pass, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to take another pass. Each time I'm going to advance a little bit farther and farther until I eventually get it so that when I put a square on there with my plane in place and put a square, and that's actually probably the best way to identify the problem anyway. Make sure you've got a good reliable square. Put your plane on there, your square on there, up against your plane, and look and see if you got to take material off of here. Then I would start right here in about 1.5 inches, and I would plane that through, and then I would move it back, and I would keep doing that until I want to make sure that you always keep this straight. The minute this is no longer straight, your board's going to tip rock on you, and that's irritating. This has to be straight, and then you have to take straight, and you have to just manipulate straight until you get straight, square, with that. It's not hard. But you need something that allows you to cut right to the edge. This will do the job, but this will do it even better. So this is a rabbiting jack plane, and it just has a longer sole, so a little more accurate work. But you can still do it with the shoulder plane. Next, Frick.
Adam MC in Seattle.
Adam in Seattle. I've been to Seattle many times.
I need to face an 8-foot long, 12-inch wide cherry board. My joiner is only 8 inches wide. I was thinking about doing it by hand with my Wood River 5.5. How would you go about doing this?
So the board is how long?
8 feet.
8 feet. And how wide?
12 inches.
12 inches wide. It has a thickness planer?
He has a jointer, but it's only 8 inches wide.
Right, but he probably has a thickness planer. He just doesn't have a joiner to match. So, bit of work, obviously, but you're going to, you need, I'm inserting a little something here, and that is that he probably has a thickness planer that has at least 12 inches in capacity, and most people have greater capacity with their thickness planers than they have with their joiners, and that's a problem. How you can face joint it. So I would take that board, as long as we can get one side that will lay flat on the bed of the thickness planer, the thickness planer will make the top side of the board parallel to the bottom side. I'm simplifying this a little bit, but for a reason. If you put a cupped board into your thickness planer, the pressure bar is going to push it flat. The cutting head is going to take material off, and when it comes out the other end, that board's going to go back like that, and now you're just going to have a smooth convex surface on the top. So you've got to get the bottom fixed. I would put that on my bench, and using a pair of winding sticks, I would sight along there. I would work with the cup side, so I would have the cup side facing up, and I would just go to work on that with a relatively heavy set on my 5.5. You could do it. And it's just going to be a matter of carefully taking off the bumps, and you're going to use your winding sticks to make sure there's no wind or twist in the board, and then you're going to use your bench as your reference. So before you send it to the thickness planer, you want to make sure that it sits flat enough on your bench that it's not going to enter your planer with any twist or wind in it. It's just, yeah, you're going to go out and buy a wide jointer after that, unless you really enjoy it, which you should. But you do need to have a reference surface. You know, there's probably guys that are good enough that they could pick up, I'm looking for one, I don't know. They could pick up that board and just using their eye, they could sight down that board and they could see whatever defect there is, whether there's a bump front to back or whether it's severely cupped side to side, and they could fix it up. And you don't have to have it 100% perfect, because you can use your planer to take a light pass and, you know, get the top side almost clean and then flip it over and get the bottom clean, and you can just flip back and forth and kind of eliminate a little bit of air along the way. But you're going to have it fairly close in order to get good, accurate lumber. Let me know how you do. Next break. Or go over to Luther's place. Just borrow, how big is Luther's joiner? Didn't we send him an 8-inch?
I think he said his jointer's 8 inches.
Oh, we did? I thought it was 6.
I thought he said 8 and his...
Well, we'll talk Luther into buying a 12-inch joiner, and then everybody in Washington can go over there, and Washington go over and use it. Next, Frick. Is Luther on?
Yeah.
Post his phone number.
Mike Evans in Powell, Tennessee.
Hi, Mike.
Does Rob ever use combination planes, and would he be willing to show their setup and use?
Combination planes like 45 and 55. I don't have one, and I haven't used one. So maybe we'll get a hold of one. I always wanted, Jake, I'll say that to Jake, and now we'll have 4 of them come next week. It would be nice to have, I would like to play around with one. I always thought it was an intriguing tool. So I'll take that. We'll see if we can't round one up. They're not that hard to find, and I've always said you could find them in pristine condition, even though they might be 50, 80 years old. Guy'd get it home and he'd look at a plane he just bought with a 3/4 inch thick booklet on how to use it. And I can see that's being set on the side and said, oh, I'll do that later, and never getting to it. Next, Frick.
This one's from Bob in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Bob, in PA.
Yeah, he says, do you ever clean up your sharpening station?
What are you saying, Bob? It's always being used. Why clean it up? It'll look like that in a minute, as soon as I'm done. I scrape the crud off every once in a while. But it's there because it's in the most convenient place to get used. So no, I never clean it. Next, Frick.
This one is from Blaine in the chat.
Hey, Blaine.
How small is small enough not to need to worry about wood movement? Is there a general dimension, less than a certain amount of inches? Does it matter if you're working on laminated pieces?
Well, if you pick up Bruce Hoadley's book on understanding wood, and you find out I think he has information on various areas of the country, but you find if a piece of, like around here, there's a lot of northern white pine used in people's houses. So if you read in his book and your humidity swings are the driest time of the winter might be 7%, and the most humid time or wet time of the summer might be 10%. So let's say you got a 3% moisture swing. And I'm saying that because houses are controlled both, especially if you heat or cool your house with a heat pump, then that acts like a dehumidifier, so that keeps the air dry. So how much, I mean, this is just a math formula, right? How much movement can you expect from those two extremes on a piece of 12-inch wide pine? And if it's 1/8 of an inch, then a 6-inch piece, you're going to have to worry about a 1/16 of an inch. And a 3-inch piece, you're going to worry about a 32nd of an inch. And 1.5 inches, you're going to worry about a 1/64th. So you do the math on that and you realize that you get down to the narrow widths. I don't worry too much about it at all. You get under 3 inches in width. Get that book. Next, Frick, please. Fire, rapid fire.
John Liba in Cornwall, New York.
John in Cornwall.
When it comes time to apply a finish to a drawer or case, do you apply the same finish to the interior and exterior parts?
Well, yes and no. It depends on how the piece is built. If it's a chest of drawers and you've got dovetailed corners, then the dovetail is going to prevent anything from happening movement-wise, cupping. If it's a desk sitting on a pedestal, so you've got a big solid slab for a desktop, and it's sitting on two pedestals, then I would finish that all the way around. You want the moisture to leave and come in at the same rate. So if that piece of wood has a finish on this side and nothing on that side, obviously the finish is going to be a barrier to entry. It's not waterproof, but it's going to slow down, as opposed to this side, which is wide open. So as you pull in, as there's more available moisture in the air, this is going to pull in fast, and as it pulls in, it's going to spread this way against the slower absorption rate on this side, so it's going to cause it to cup like that. So, yes. When at all possible, finish it all the way around. Next, Fred. My bench has a finish on all the way around, top and bottom.
David Permenter in the chat.
Hi, David. David's down in Texas.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to update the Cosman Workbench plans to reflect the new way of assembling / bolting together?
Sorry, say that again, please.
Are there any plans to update the Cosman Workbench plans to reflect the new way of assembly / bolting together?
Hey, what's he talking about?
Do you have plans or something on the website?
Yeah, but what did we change? Read it again. I'm trying to think of what we did.
He's wondering if you're going to upload the plan, like
upload or change.
Update the plans to
Update the
reflect
plans.
the new way of assembling and bolting together.
Jake, what new way?
There is no new way that I'm aware of.
David, tell me what we're doing different, because I'm drawing a blank.
The only thing that I can think of that's different is we use a vacuum press and we use threaded inserts for the top.
Yeah.
Or there's also the.
Whoa. Okay. So yeah. Well, we do it. Yeah. Now I know what he means. At least I think. We build the benches that we sell different than the way we show you to do it, and that just grew out of having to apply clean production methods that would make it easier for the guys to build them. So you build the base. The trestles on the end are built like Lego, which is a nice, strong way of doing it. What we do now is we just make 4 pieces: the top, the bottom, the 2 legs. And we glue, and then we run 2 lag bolts, heavy, big 3/8 lag bolts down through the top and up through the bottom. So I don't think we're going to make. Yeah, I don't. There are no plans to change that. If that's what you're talking about, I still prefer the old way. If I was making one myself, I would do it the way that we show in the video. I just think it's a better build. I shouldn't say it's not a better build. It's more convenient. Yeah. No, I like it better. The way we do it now it lends itself better to production. And when what more can I say? There was a lot of considerations when we made the change, because you're doing a whole bunch of benches, so you're trying to get better utilization of materials and all that. I'm sure I thought about all this at one point. Drawing a blank on it now, but. Next, Frick.
Dan Patton in Fall River, Nova Scotia.
Hey, Dan. Dan, I know Dan.
He says, I have a lovely piece of olive wood, 10 inches by 2 feet. Any suggestions for a project?
A lovely piece of olive wood, 10 inches by 2 feet. I presume it's not veneer. 10 inches by 2 feet. So he's got a piece of olive wood, 10 inches by 2 feet. Not really big enough to do anything beyond boxes, I think. If it's just a really beautiful piece of wood, hand plane it, put a nice clear finish on it, and put it on your wall. I've often thought I wanted to decorate some of my home with just slabs of wood that are cleaned up. Dale Nish had several big pieces of walnut, and he just had them finished and left with live edge and just on his wall as hanging pieces. It looked really good. If you're not going to do that, you can do boxes. Are we showing them on the new chisels? You got them there. Why'd you bring them out? What are you doing, Frick?
Just sending things to
Oh. Okay, you're going to have to give me another question.
This one comes from Dean K.
Hey, Dean.
Hey, Rob, what are you using as your main dust collector?
In this shop, the dust collector's in the other building, so it actually goes outside before it goes back inside. That's why there's a big hole right there, because that brings back the air. And it is a Oneida
3 horsepower V system.
3 horsepower what, Jake?
V system.
V system? A 3 horsepower V system. Has a 45-gallon drum, and it's fine for what we do in here. Shoot, I probably don't have to empty it more than once a month.
Ready for another one?
Yeah, always.
Drago Dichev in Santa Barbara, California.
Hey, Drago.
I see Rob is using his regular block plane on his mini shooting board. However, would a skew block plane be a better option for that purpose? That would be the left-hand skew version, he said.
A lot of talk about what you're addressing. So, if I took my skew block plane, now I would have to use the other version because this has my cutter down here, which would be cutting into my, excuse me, cutting into the edge of excuse me. I would be cutting into the edge of my shooting board each time. I could go like that. Is there an advantage to having that little skew on there? I don't think so. I don't think so. Not at the price of these. How much are these, Jake? Jake, how much are the skew block planes now?
$385.
So $400 for a skew block plane. I think the regular block plane is just fine. Does the job well. If your blade is sharp, there's a whole lot of noise made about angled blades on shooting boards. And the original Stanley was done that as well. But if the blade is good and sharp, it's not an issue to cut. It's a little too heavy. Now that's going through a piece of bird's eye maple. Easy, piece of cake. Check out Jeff O'Connor's Instagram channel where he reviews, speaking of shooting boards, does a quick little review on our grip. This, if you use, I'm going to do a little commercial. If you use a shooting board, and unless you have hands of cow leather, trying to use a shooting board over any amount of time where you really don't have any place to put your hand other than wedge that meaty part of your palm in this area right here. More than 20 minutes of work on this in a day and you're going to have blisters. So Jake came up with this. It's called the grip, and it fits on there, and it is a beauty. It makes the process very intuitive, if that is a good word. You have to drill a hole in your plane. It's a 1/4 inch diameter hole, 3/16 of an inch deep, and if that bothers you, then buy another plane. This is a tool. That fits in there. There's a little brass pin. There is a hole, an 1/8 inch hole. So you back that brass pin out. You get this in place. You drill down through that brass pin with your 1/8 inch drill bit to give yourself a pilot hole. And then you can finish it with a 1/4 inch diameter. Then you bring this out so it sticks out about an 1/8 of an inch. There's 2 little set screws right there that are, what are they called, Jake?
Well, they're just oval point.
Oval point. And you have them out just a little bit. And when I say a little bit, maybe 1/64 when you first start the process. And then when you get it done, your hole's drilled, you cut a little chamfer in there. When it's in place, if there's any slop, you take it out by just adjusting these little set screws, and then you get it so that there's no slop. And then every time you go to put it on, I always hold it like this. That little lip up here, just go over until it gets in the hole and it drops down in, and away you go. Bob's your uncle. Or in this case, your father. Go ahead, Frick.
Howard Smith in Tennessee.
Howard?
He says, I just purchased an IBC chisel. As a beginning woodworker, how should I prepare it before I start?
Oh, that's a great segue. Why don't you show them that one right there?
So he just bought a 1/8 inch?
No.
He just says IBC. I just purchased an IBC chisel.
Oh, what are you saying, Jake?
The one that's running parallel with you.
Why are you saying that?
What?
Why are you saying that?
Just show them it.
What's already done?
Not that. The chisel itself.
Oh,
The blade.
this is new chisels with a new logo that Frick is responsible for. It's going to be on all our tools now.
I'm talking about the blade.
So if I was going to prepare the blade,
I'm talking about that blade specifically.
well, what?
Right there.
I know, but that's not what he asked.
I know, but he said he's talking about an IBC chisel. I'm saying mentioned
Well,
this
all
one,
right,
sir.
but not now.
Well, sure. You talked about the handle?
Bob, tell Jake to be quiet and just film. If I had a brand new chisel, first thing I would do is I would take off the handle, take off the ferrule. And I chose one that was not easy to remove. Let me try to get this off. That should just... Okay, don't cooperate. It's a setup. Jake looked around until he found one that wouldn't come apart. Oh, let's grab a different one. So here's my new 1/8" chisel. Take the handle off. And this is not only to keep the nice wood handle from getting all covered in gunk, but it also makes it easier to work. Now on the back side of your chisel, we test all these chisels when we get them from IBC before we handle them and ship them out. And what's our tolerance in the back?
1/2 of a thou.
1/2 a thou. And we make sure that it does not spin like a helicopter. Well, I have to put that on a flat surface to prove that. So if anything, it's going to be slightly concave, but no more than 1/2 a thou. So what you're going to deal with are grinding scratches that come from the factory, and I think his are on an angle like that. So with this stripped down like this, what did you do?
I came up with scratched my neck and I hit his camera.
I'm going to start with my 1,000 or 500 grit, whatever. Make sure your stone is flat. You're going to set that down on there. You can set the whole thing on if you want. Depends on what you want to do. But I typically start here with the end of the chisel in the middle of the stone, and I go forward and back, and I gradually migrate over to my left, and then I come back till I'm in the middle again. And I keep going middle to left to back to left to back. I don't go from here over to there because then I have no reference surface. Then to save my stone, I'll flip it around and I'll do the same thing. Center, forward and back, slowly migrating over to the left and then back to center. Why the lateral movement? Well, it prevents you from having a ridge cut here on the edge of the stone. It gives you a little blending area. That's the way we always did it because you couldn't do it like this with other chisels. If you want, you can set the whole body of the chisel on there and do the whole thing. It's up to you. Once I've chased away all of the factory grinding scratches, then I'm just going to go through a succession of grits. Maybe I'll go from the 1,000 to the 6,000. I'll use it to chase away all the 1,000. Always making sure I'm keeping the stone flat. And then I'll go to the 16,000 to chase away the 6,000 until I get a nice shiny surface. It's nice and flat. And at that point, the back side of my chisel is done. Never have to touch it again, except for deburring. And the deburring is always done on the final stone, the 16,000. At that point, I would put my chisel back together. And I'll just give you a quick sharpening. I like to put in the vise and give it a really good turn. Make sure you get your logo right up front. I like to have the handle on there when I'm sharpening because it allows me to kind of bridge my wrist. I have the chisel back in here. So set that on the primary bevel, elevate slightly. Depending on the width of the chisel, you're either going to do little wee forward and back strokes. If it's wide enough, you can do circular. Do that until you can detect a slight burr on the back side of the blade, at which time you come over to the 16,000, find the primary, come up a little bit higher than I did on that previous stone. Same idea, you can either do circles or little short forward and back strokes. After 5 or 6 seconds on that, flip it over, drop it down, just do a little deburring, just a few seconds, and away you go. That's it. So the maintenance on your chisel is just done on the bevel side. As I said, and I'll say it again, you never touch the back of your chisel with anything but the 16,000 grit stone just to get rid of that burr out on the end. And that'll make you happy for a lot of years. And there's our 1/8 inch.
No.
Oh, that's the new 16th inch. Sorry. That's the new 16th inch. So Willie's making these for us. Now, I don't even know of anybody making a 16th inch chisel. We have an 8, and Willie made us screwed up one day, and he made us a 16th by mistake, and we said, you know what, this is a good idea. And the fact that it starts off as an 8 gives you lots of reference platform, or quarter, sorry. It gives you lots of reference on your stone because you've got all this material. You have to be really careful sharpening it because it would be easy to skew, but you can do it. So there's times when you can't get in anything in, you can't get into an area with an 8/4. So I always recommend this as an essential, but this is another essential. Next, Rick.
This one's from Chris in Roswell, New Mexico.
Chris in Roswell.
Isn't that where Area 51 is?
Area 51's in Arizona, or Nevada.
Oh. Something about aliens.
There's some other sci-fi thing you're doing for it.
Yeah. Rob, when planing large cases, how would you recommend to clamp it to the workbench? I have a Schoberg Elite bench, and I struggle with holding the case to plane it. Thanks for your help.
Okay, say it again, because I'm just envisioning what he's saying.
So he's planing a large case.
A large
He
case.
wants to know how you would recommend.
Oh, okay. So he's dovetailed it together, and now he's having to plane the edge outside.
Yes.
Well, oftentimes when I'm building something like that, I mean, I literally have to go in and build some kind of a way of holding it in place. The old standby is clamping, and that's why I have lots of 1-inch MDF, because it's really handy when it comes to things like that. I'm just going to take these clamps off so I can use this. Remember what you're supposed to remind me, Jake? Peen that.
All right.
So I would get, if it's possible, I would get a big piece of 1-inch MDF, and I would clamp it to the bench. Where do you want to stay? Clamp it to the bench, so that make sure so that your overhang will allow you to slide the case on like so. And you want it to be, actually, what you can do too, if you don't want to use a big piece, is you can use several pieces. And have one piece that comes all the way to this end and one piece all the way to that end, but make sure you got a support in the middle and hold that in place, then you can go ahead and plane up the sides. If it has a back in it, you can still do it, right? Because you can come right up to where the back touches. You still have plenty of support for it. And then if that doesn't work, wow, you're just going to have to figure out some way. I mean, I've had it down on the floor before. I put a piece of styrofoam down on the floor and had it leaning up against my bench, and I'm planing that way. There's always a way to do it, but it's, every piece is different, so you're going to have to figure it out. That's all part of the allure. How you like that word? Of being a woodworker. You got to figure stuff out, especially when you're designing stuff that is unique to you. Good luck. Next, Rick.
Steve Peel in Edson, Alberta.
Hey, Steve.
Are you familiar?
Edson. Where is Edson? I think that is west of Red Deer. I think it's over toward the mountains. Rick?
Yeah, are you familiar with or have ever used Swedish oil? No one seems to have ever heard of it. We used it in the early 80s.
Swedish oil?
Yeah.
No, I never heard of Swedish oil. Danish oil, but not Swedish oil. I wonder if somebody's calling it the same thing, different names. No, can't comment on that one, sorry.
Blaine Lehman
Hey,
from
Blaine.
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas.
He says, I have a question about hand planes. I bought first hand plane, Stanley number 4. Rough planing tricks to get a very unflat surface to become flat and parallel.
Okay, say it again, please. He's got a new or used?
Doesn't say.
Okay, but it's a Stanley number 4. And he's looking for...
So do you have any planing tricks to get a very unflat surface to become flat and parallel?
Yes, you have to remove the right amount of wood from the right spot. What more can I add to that? Number 4 is, about the same length as a scrub plane. So you're going to have to do a lot of this. You're going to have to lay that down on your bench, and you're going to have to squat down, and you're going to have to read by eye where the high spots are. It's visible. I would suggest you get yourself some chalk. I had some here. And you chalk off the area where it's really high, a big bump. And you're going to go in there, and you're going to work that area. And then you're going to come back to the end of your bench and squat down again and try to identify the high spots. Identify and remedy. Do that, do that, do that. And then get your winding sticks out. And when you put your winding sticks on one on the front, one on the back, that'll help you identify any twist or wind in the board. And that way you can eventually get it perfect. But you're not starting off with the best tool. Number 4 is too short, too light. I mean, it's okay for hogging off an area, but that wouldn't have been my choice for if I was going to get one plane. By the way, where is that one, Jake? I found my...
Oh, I don't know where you put it.
Yeah, neither do I. I found my first and my second plane. And my first one was a number 4, a number 3 actually, from my grandfather, back before I knew much about.
It must be out there.
Somewhere in here, I have it. Anyway, so I found a number 8. I bought later in life. Actually, I bought it when I was in my early 20s. I sent it away to California, a place that Ian Kirby was attached to, and they milled it, all the key points, so it came back nice and flat. I used that for a long time. Actually, I used that right up until I hitched my wagon to Lee Nelson, and then I got turned on to his planes, and then David Charlesworth got me turned on to the 5.5. And then I went to work as a consultant for Woodcraft, helping them develop their planes. And my next will be when we come up with our own plane, which is in the works. Next trick.
Sean Grumbles would like to know.
Sean Grumbles.
When you're resawing to make veneer flitches, between each flitch, do you hand plane the surface before you
Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough to plane one side to get rid of the saw marks, but it's so much easier to plane one side when it's full thickness. So I would get a good clean side, cut it in the bandsaw, resurface that side, cut another one on the bandsaw. It's a lot easier.
He was hoping you would say no because he's not very good at sharpening.
Well, I'll send Luther over. He'll whip you into shape. Next, Rick. Watch the time.
We have 5 minutes. Are we doing a draw tonight, or are we waiting until Thursday?
No, we'll do it on Thursday night. So we'll finish it. We finished this episode on Thursday, remember, and that's where we'll do our draw. And we'll do a giveaway too. We'll give away some tools.
All right. This one comes from Norman Proctor.
I saw an order from Norman just recently. In fact, I think I called him. I know I did. May have left a voicemail if I didn't speak. Sorry, I can't remember that.
It's from Jefferson City, Missouri. In terms of building the Cosman Workbench, would it benefit the top?
Norman's actually, I think his name, he goes by Bob.
He goes by Bob, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says
He
that
goes
here.
by Bob Proctor.
Bob Proctor, yeah, that's why I remember him.
In terms of building the Cosman Workbench, would it benefit the top if I used a sheet of oak veneer plywood on the bottom layer for purposes of leg, bolts, or screws grabbability?
No. You get 3 inches of MDF. You put a lag bolt into 2 inches of MDF, and you're not going to have to worry about that coming out. No. I would keep it homogeneous. Homogeneous? Homogeneous. All MDF. I wouldn't mix the materials. I don't know if it's going to cause any problem or not, but why risk it? Stick with all the MDF, or stick with all plywood. Next, Rick.
I got a good one here. Where to
two,
go?
four.
Can you explain the rabbit on a shooting board and show a close-up of where exactly it goes and why?
Who's that? Luther.
No, that is
Karumi?
Karumi Custom Woodcraft.
Karumi Custom Woodcraft. So here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here's your shooting board. He's talking about this little rebate right here. Okay. That little rebate runs against the sole of the plane right below the blade. So if you look right there, it prevents your blade from cutting into your shooting board. That's the only
Which
reason.
it would happen eventually.
Well, it would, but yeah, I'd like to have it a little more precise than that. And if you want, you can saturate this whole area from one end to the other with cyanacrylate, and that'll help stiffen that up and make it wear even better. But that's the reason why we do that. Next, got one left. My clock says 9 o'clock. Eastern, or Atlantic.
We're done. But there's a quick one. Would 2 4-foot carpenter's levels make an acceptable set of winding sticks? That's from Mickey D
Mickey D.
in the chat. Yeah.
I wonder if that's Mickey from the DC area. I don't remember Mickey's last name. He was in a class I taught down there. Well, they're going to give you a level of accuracy that will be equivalent to how straight each level is and how parallel, or if I should say, there's no such thing as how parallel. If the sides of your level are straight and parallel, then you can use it. It's going to be a little bit hard to identify though, because the problem, and the reason why we make ours like this, if you're looking at an aluminum level onto an aluminum level, it's pretty hard to spot. But when you've got dark and then you've got white tips, well, it's much easier to spot any difference. Now you could go in and you could use a Sharpie, or you could take some yellow masking tape and put that on either corner. I like to have it interrupted. A little piece here on the end, a little piece out there in the end. And 4-foot level, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably don't need to be 4 feet. That's taken out to a level of flatness that probably beyond what you need, but it's up to you. But just put the two little pieces on either end on the back level, so that they're easier to spot.
Jeff O'Connor would like to know who would win in a fight between me and Jake.
Well, Jeff, maybe we'll plan that for October. We'll have a grudge match between
If Jake can ever
Fritz,
if Jake can ever stay
healthy,
unbroken.
but he'd certainly be broken after that battle. And Jeff can referee.
All I have to do though is hand frick a chisel.
No chisels allowed in my fights.
Jeff is coming. Jeff's going to be my assistant in the October class. He was supposed to be bringing Kim, but she backed out. Anyway, hopefully the weather will still be nice and we get a chance to go out on the river. We have the weather forecast for this week is sunny every day. It's going to hit 21, 22, 23 the latter part of the week, which means we take the guys out for an afternoon and take them out on the pontoon boat and tour them around the St. John River. And they'll actually love that. And if you don't think you love that, call Mike out in Edmonton and he'll tell you how much fun he had. That was a wonderful story. All right, say good night. See you in a couple of days. Always great to be able to tune in and meet these people. Appreciate your support. Please spread the word about what we do. Tell everybody that you know, the Purple Heart Project, let them figure it out, or let them go and check it out. And that's that many eyes and ears looking for people who really need what we can offer. And we are still taking applications for next year. So you can check that out at thepurpleheartproject.org. See you in 4 or 5 days. Oh, look at that.